right, so I think we're good to go. And so who do we have on the call today?
Okay. Marie, Yvonne, and Lana are in here with myself.
Okay, great. So I think it's just myself and Mahmood on this side over here, and um, I'll be doing the majority of the training. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just a little recap from our first session when we were going over the position budgeting part. Um, we break down the different types of Hyperion, the different cubes here shown on this architecture structure. Um, so the first time we looked at this bottom section here, hopefully you could see my mouse as well, but I'm hovering over this bottom cube, what we call the HCP cube. And now we'll be looking at mainly the revenue and expense cube, or the plan one cube. And the significance of that is all of our salary data and our FTE data will flow over from the HCP cube. All the edits and updating that we did there with the positions to get the correct salary and FTE amounts and allocation. And it will push over to that cost center and department combination in the right account and populate there in our revenue and expense cube. So that's what we'll mainly be looking at. We'll look at ways to update the revenue and expenses within planning, and then we'll move forward and give the alternative option, which has been popular at Tyler in the past, of doing kind of a mass upload for the revenue and expenses through SmartView. After we do that, we'll just talk about some of the calc scripts or business rules that take place that are needed to get the data where we want them to be, where we want it to be. And then lastly, which will take up a big chunk of this training, we'll be looking at the reporting. So since I do have this architecture diagram still up, our revenue and expense cube, what we'll be looking at today, flows to what we call the RP1 cube. That's where a lot of our reports are based out of. Some reports pull directly from the Plan 1 cube. The reason we like to usually pull from this RP1 cube is it's a different type of cube and aggregate storage compared to a block storage. So performance is a lot better, and a few other reasons that are technical as well, but no need to get into that right now. And lastly, there's three different methods that we really use for reporting: web analysis, financial reporting, and SmartView. So we'll talk a little bit about all those and see how familiar you are with them, and hopefully make you more familiar as well. So let's start off by going into Workspace. So hopefully you're all able to see my screen still. And you all have access to Hyperion Production Workspace. Same thing that I used when we had our session 1 training was a dummy account, or just account specified to be a Tyler user. So I do my initials. I created account RP_UTT. I'll enter in my password and log in. And here's where we get started. So I know this is a little bit of a refresher, but to open up the application, we have multiple ways to do so. If security is set right, which it should be for all of you, I haven't heard any requests to have access to any other campus's apps. That's very rare that's the case. We should only have access to what's called UTT budget. So in Workspace, we always have a field here where it shows recently open or quick links. You could click on UTT budget in either of these places, or if you'd like, you could go navigate, applications, planning, and then you see UTT budget there. But just for the shortcut, I usually click on the UTT budget right here in recently open, and you'll see that it differentiates with a little icon compared to some of these other reporting icons that you see open. So that's where we'll start off. Another reminder from our session 1 is the way that we have it set up here at UT Shared is working through the My Task list where we have forms set up and hopefully a logical order to get the budget completed. So that's where we're always navigating first, the My Task list. And what we see here in My Task list is the position budget preparation. That's what we spent the majority of our training on last time. So I don't need to touch on that now. Of course, if you have any questions later on and want to circle back to the position budgeting, we could certainly do so. But as for now, we'll pretend in our minds that we have completed position budget preparation and we're moving on to the Plan 1 data or the revenue and expense or operating expenses, whatever you'd like to call it. We're moving on to that section of the budget. So you'll see our first three tasks here, or forms, are allocation forms, setting the appropriation amount for E&G funds, designated tuition funds, student service fees funds, and then we move into forms of the actual data. So I'm kind of already skipping ahead, but to make a point, and I'll show you why. Like I said, usually we go through the task list to in order here, but for now I will skip ahead to what we call the E&G forms and open up a combination here. So this is different than what we saw on the HCP cube. We saw a lot of extra data where we had position hire date and salary amounts and just employee names that were assigned. Here we're looking at the operating expenses, and one similarity though is that we have our point of view up top. This will change frequently depending on what cost center and department you're trying to update, as well as what version you're working in. Version is key. Usually we set the security that it's read-only or locked out for other versions. So currently at Tyler, being that we haven't started the FY19 budget data, we only have the baseline member available to us. If we copied over to baseline revision or department 1 or stage 1, there's so many options. We could talk about that later if you have any questions. Then you would see those members populate as well here on this list, where you could go back and forth and see what the data looked at a certain point, just a little freeze frame of it. But right now we're only at our baseline member. And the first thing that I want to point out is our column headers here. So we've added a few items this year, and I think that they've been positive enhancements. What we've always had is the upcoming fiscal year. That for us is budget FY19. That's what we're trying to populate. We have and then one other key note about that is, of course, we set security again, and security is set that the only year that is writable or open to edit is FY19 for the budget. So that's why you'll see some of these white cells where you're able to change data and make your updates as needed. Everything else on this form is gray because we have it as read-only or locked access. That's on purpose because if the data has been submitted for FY18 budget, we don't want to go back and touch it again. But full disclosure, we've had to do that in the past where we're tweaking things that, maybe weren't caught. So that would just be a request to, hey, let's open up FY18 again just so we can make some changes. So it is possible to open. I just want to give you that information. Okay. And I also leave on the form the FY17 budget. So that's not our current budget, but our last year prior budget, just because sometimes the more data, the better. And then here are some of the fields that we have added on for this year. We'll start with the actuals because to me that's the clearest. So we have last year's actual data. For example, let's just look at fact salaries. We pulled in the 7,970. Oh, got my numbers wrong. 797,233. We could compare that to the amount that we budgeted. So the actuals looks like the budget was based off the actuals of the prior year. And now we're looking at actuals 18, and since we're in the middle of the year, these are actuals year to date. If I had this form open where we could drill into year total, that's something that I might do as I'm talking about it out loud. You can see the amount that is by period or by month. But just know that obviously actuals FY18, being that we're in FY18, are year to date, and we update those that section a couple times a month. I know that it probably only needs to be done once a month at the end of the month, but just to stay on top of it, we do it a couple times a month. And then same can be said for the adjusted budgets. We have permanent adjusted budget and all adjusted budget. To the best of my ability, I'll try to describe them. Where permanent adjusted budget is just once our budget closes, our budget has been finalized for the year. Any post-finalizations, changes get posted here in our permanent adjusted budget. And then there's the all adjusted budget, and one of you may even be able to describe that better than I can, but I know that's picking up a few other adjustments that don't get picked up in our permanent adjusted budget. As we'll see here for at least the chemistry cost center and department combination, it looks like these two fields have the same adjusted and permanent adjusted budget. So part of the reason that I bring all this up is some of our conversations we've had via email, Nikia, where we could run any reports based off of this data compared to a budget. So if we wanted to do a budget FY19 compared to year-to-date actuals, or throw in that permanent adjusted budget, or even more so talking long-term future, if we want to base a formula to pre-populate FY19 budget based off one of these columns. Let's say if we did permanent adjusted budget, I'm just throwing out scenarios that would populate FY19. Those are things that we could do for you guys, and probably I could see being a future plan for other campuses as well. But currently how it sits, we take the FY18 budget for just other campuses, and I just want to go full circle, that's why I'm bringing this up. And we copy over all of the expenses, the non-salary expenses, to become the FY19 baseline starting point. So chemistry here isn't giving us too much of an example. It looks like we only have salary expenses entered in for FY18. Here's a revenue, our 45,000 state appropriation. So what it would do is it would just copy and give us a starting point of 1,220,653 here. Instead, it starts blank because Tyler's process is not seeding the budget that way currently from the FY18 for a couple reasons. It seems like you guys have more changes than Head Start by doing it that way.
Okay.
So the last item that I want to bring up while we're looking on this form is you will see some data for FY19. And the reason you see that is we have loaded in just a preliminary run of the positions and the salaries and FTEs that come with it. So you'll see that it looks like it was similar to FY18, where we have the same amount of classified, a little bit less on the faculty salary, but that's given us a starting point of our expenses for this department. And then here's our total expenses at the bottom, our 76097, and our FTE count, where we could see the difference between last year and this year. And this is, of course, before any adjustments, and it's also data that's a little bit old, so we'll do a reload. That may have changed now. Okay, so here to get back to the starting point, if we were to go with Plan A before giving the Smart View option, what would take place is your position data all feeds over, as you see here. We get our updated salary and expenses, and FTE totals, and now we have to enter in both our other expenses and our state appropriation amount. So you'll note that when we look at state appropriation right here, I'm logged in as a UTT Budget Office Access user, meaning I have the same level of security as any of you. And you're probably thinking, how do I enter in my 776,097 to balance? And that's where we would go back to our first three forms. So let's go to E&G allocations, and I'm just taking note here that our cost center is 21,1077. So this first one, E&G allocations, if I go to this form, the purpose of this form is kind of to make it a budget office only tool where you set the revenue here and users don't have access to it. Now, I know currently it seems like at Tyler, budget office is the only group going in and updating the data. So this may not be as useful, but at the same time, it could be because it gives you a total view of all your state appropriations, all your revenue for FY19, and you can compare it to what was populated from FY18, and then also our expenses to date for FY19 if we're trying to balance that way. So let's see, I started talking and my mental note went away. There we go. There's our chemistry. So I just want to show how it works. Last year we entered in our 1.2 million for our state appropriation. This year, of course, this is off since we haven't entered in our other expenses, but let's just say, our expenses are 776,097. I go and hit save, this floppy disk looking thing up top. And now I could go back to my E&G form and I see that it's populated right away. And then additionally, we have a little formula here where it shows if we're in or out of balance. If I just change this quickly back to 0, or even if I enter in a value of 0, could be any value that I'm putting in that's just off. We'll see that we get a little red flag or yellow flag warning message with a validation just telling us that our revenue and expenses don't equal 0. And just a heads up for those that would be working on the page and see that they need to possibly make an adjustment if our end goal is to balance. So let's go ahead and move forward, and then I'll ask questions. So you have multiple ways to do this from a budgeting standpoint. If you are given access to know how much you could budget for each department or cost center, then you could even enter this all in quickly and then get the expenses to add up. But of course, that's not always the way that it works. So if you have to do the expenses first and kind of enter in the revenue afterwards, that's how it would take place. And once we go to our forms again, just a reminder that you can type in or search for your department and cost center combinations. Uh-oh, did I do something wrong? Maybe you guys. Let's try business affairs. Okay, so I am guessing trying to find combinations for data here. I will find one though. Usually those would come up. Let's see, let's try something like accounting. There we go. So we would navigate and find our data once again once you finish a department and cost center. And This is usually the process that takes place, but there is something that I need to mention if we're going through the data this way. Looking at the forms, we have FY19 budget populating all the expenses that are shown from prior year or from actuals data. That is called what opens an intersection or a cell. But of course, that there might be a new account that is used for the new year that hasn't ever been picked up in actuals or budget before. Now, it's pretty rare because we'd probably have the actuals FY18 pick up it through a load. But let's just say we didn't. The form that you see under number 1 state departmental budget is, excuse me, non-zero suppressed form, meaning that it shows every single account possibility account that we have in the tree, and as you can see, that's quite a few. So even if it hasn't been budgeted in previous years or have actuals data, it will now show up here. So what you would do if that were the case to create a new intersection, just go to your number 2 form. I'll just put a value of 100 and save it. And then if I go back here in FY19, I see my $100 that I entered to create this new intersection. So hopefully that makes sense if you did go this route. I'd say 99% of the time you're in good shape with the cells already being open based off other years and other scenarios. But if not, that's how you would go through and open it. So all of you are aware of the funds that you have and the cost centers that are reported to each fund, and that's how we break up these forms. I should have mentioned this earlier. So we have our E&G forms, and then we move through the budget. It's supposed to be based off of how some of the reports are in the budget book. I think that was the purpose of creating it this way. So we have our 2100 cost centers, and then we'll move forward to designated, where it's all the same concept. Here's a designated tuition form. Now I move into my 3100 cost centers, and that's where you see if I were to hit my drop down, it's based off only showing members with this 3100, not always 3100, I guess I should say just designated tuition. I think the logic though for Tyler is that they are 3100 members. And you would do the same thing where you see the form is built similarly, actually the same, where we have our budget years and then adjusted columns and then actual data. One difference though is that we no longer have our state appropriation E&G up top. That's because now we're working with designated. So you may or may not have already guessed it, but we've moved back to the top here and look at our designated tuition allocation. Go to number 1 form. And now you see that you have a transfer out designated tuition and a transfer in designated tuition. We just follow the same logic that if you need to do a transfer in showing that revenue, here's where you would enter it in. And same if you needed to do the transfer out. And both of those accounts that we have set up would flow into the combination that you entered in for the department and the cost center. You see that we already have the transfer in designated tuition shown here, and we may have a transfer out down low. I'm not quite sure with this department, but if we did, then it comes in and will populate right here on the form. I am noticing as we're going through that you could actually enter in these values directly on the form as well instead of having to go to that page. But a lot of people do like the allocation form because it shows kind of a balancing act at the high level where we have all cost centers and all departments. And if we scroll down, we should have a total allocation at the bottom. and it's just a good way to check that our transfer outs equal our transfer ins. Um, I could keep going through, and I will if you guys want, but we try to keep it pretty consistent here. Where
Yeah,
uh,
look like.
okay, yeah. So once we go to, it would be other designated, which is just another fun roll up. 3105s, I believe, and then student services and service departments. And it's the same logic where you just hop back and forth if need be, to show your expenses and set those revenues. So let's take a quick pause here and ask if there's any questions or anything that you'd like me to show on these forms.
Um, I don't think so. Not right now. Looks like it's pretty consistent. So I'm sure as we dive into it, we'll get more familiar with it.
Yeah,
I am
that's
happy with the actuals, though. I'm used to seeing, the current budget, the proposed budget, for the future fiscal year, and then two or three prior years. So that's helpful to
yeah,
see
good,
that.
good. Um, yeah, and I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but these are just forms. We don't consider them to be reports always, although they could be used as just an export to Excel if need be. But the reason I mention that is if the data exists on any of these forms, we could make it in a reporting view at a more friendly look to show that budget versus actuals or multiple years of the budget, just whatever you may need. And I know that I've done that for some of the other schools.
Mm-hmm.
So just giving you the heads up that if the data exists, it's a report that we could do without any problems whatsoever.
Awesome.
So
Thank
let's keep moving forward. Auxiliary would be the same. It's just we don't have the allocation set up for it. And then we have our restricted grants, restricted gifts. Same logic throughout all these forms. I'll show you here. Just I would have to
you.
select a combination and populate my data. And then we move into these bottom half of forms. So everything from E&G forms down to unexpended plant will be entering in those expenses and revenues as need be. The allocation forms up top are to set that amount as we had discussed. And then I created a little folder, and before I open it, it may need updating. I'm not sure, hopefully not. But um, on the forms, I don't want them to get too complicated where if I open up an E&G form again, we have all these columns, 19, 18, 17. Since we've been in Hyperion since budget 15, I don't want to go 16, 15, and all of a sudden the data's not been useful. It's more been a setback and clogging our view. So we don't clear that data out of the system. We do still hold on to it. So I'll look at historical budget data. I pick my combination here. Let's go back to chemistry. And here's where we could get a pretty quick view of our budget for all years that we've had Hyperion being saved. So 15, 16, 17, 18. You'll notice that it looks like a small form, but it actually contains all the data. I set this form up just, once again, not to explode out on you, where it starts up without being expanded, but all you have to do is hit this little drill button and you could drill into the form and see your operating revenue or non-operating and build all your way down. Same with expenses if need be, and there's a way to do it quicker. I'm just showing you that there's the different levels. So that's how you would see these forms, and then same can be shown for actuals, which we've just been putting in the system a little bit more recently. And so that would be just an informational purpose. If you needed to reference something back from years ago, you have it all on the same page there. That's our all historical data folder. Then we have a folder called Reports folder in Budget Office. Both of these are show reports that are on forms, and like I mentioned just 5 minutes ago, the majority of our reports should not be based off of forms, but we do have a couple just showing some quick views. So let's walk through those. If I open up this reports folder and I look at, for example, just all accounts by cost center, that gives me my revenue, my expenses, fringe, a little formula in there. We are limited to what we can do. Here, I see there's another little form with some more detail, so let me open up that and see if it's more helpful. For the reason because it's pulling off of our planning cube, which I mentioned when we were looking at the architecture, is a block storage cube, so it takes a little bit longer to run. Some of these reports don't really get used, and we use mainly our reporting tools. So being that this one's not opening, I may need to look at it because I know that it exists in a web analysis format, so we'll take a look at that later. I just wanted to walk through these quickly. Here is our all funds view. Chemistry rolls up to E&G. Do remember that if we want to, we could look at all departments, and that will populate hopefully our funds for all our funds for the total department value. Just a little budget statement summary. If we're to scroll down. So it does give you data. This one might be helpful where it gives you all your accounts. Here it's a little less detail, just higher level, total revenues, total expenses. Once again, from my perspective, I usually wouldn't use these unless you wanted to do a quick view of a report. I'll just mention the other ones. We have our operating statement, which uses the AFR tree for accounts. Maybe I'll open it. So different roll up here, but same thing where we would just pick our cost centers. Right now it's picking at the highest level. And we see all of our accounts for budget 18. FY19 is missing a lot of the accounts due to only having salary expenses currently in the system. And then we still have some salary reports that we didn't mention last time, but FTEs by department, FTEs by cost center, percentage allocation, salary and additional earnings. I don't want to go back too far to what we were looking at last time, but just note that there are a couple reports that may or may not be useful. But just that they exist, so if you ever needed to reference them or have us tweak them, there are reports here. This one looks like maybe a custom report that I built. I'm not sure if it was asked for last year or the year before. We don't have any data for FY19 yet, but this looks like maybe something that was useful to see our transfer out versus transfer in. Pretty similar probably to our designated tuition allocation form. And then last one that probably gives a little bit more value would be our element of cost validation. We'll talk about the element of cost later on. But this is pretty much the E page or D page report that is driven off our element of cost roll up. And it's just giving us our totals here. If we needed to see the hierarchy, we could see, what rolls into College of Arts and Sciences. Here's all our cost centers. Business and technology, here's all our cost centers and the FTEs and expenses that come along with it. I'll do the same thing, just looking quickly at our budget office folder. These are meant to be not meant for department users, only for budget office, and that's why it's a separate folder. The different security, but being that, once again, it's the budget office, back office doing everything, we'll just note that they're two separate folders and not be too concerned about it. But same thing, if you pick your proper cost center and department combinations here, you could see your tuition revenue all we're looking at is different levels of our accounts, different builds here. Um, so these are things you could go ahead and look around at, and if they're helpful, they're helpful. If they're not, they're not. One that's really helpful to me are these bottom two, 9 and 9.1. Now, they may be more helpful to me because I'm not as familiar with your cost center and department combinations, but what these do is they show us every intersection that we have. So a lot of the time, if I'm working with one of you or at a different campus, they say, hey, cost center 2100 1010 accounting and finance is off. Can you update it? I think I don't know which department is uh, level 0 providing data for that cost center. So I could just go to this form and it shows pretty quickly just all the combinations of data that we have. That's by cost center. This one's by department because departments have multiple cost centers feeding into it. So here's president, for example, and I can see all the cost centers that have ever had data to go around with the president. And if you say, hey, president 110, 100 is off by 377,000, I'll probably know to look at this cost center for you and see if that's something that we could update. Okay, so we ran through all the forms here. One thing that I do need to mention before I go to the Smart View template is this bottom task here. You see it called, let me collapse these folders. So this aggregate plan 1, you see this here. This is something that I've put on the bottom of everyone's task list and given access rights to launch for Budget Office users. And when you launch it, it probably will run for Tyler maybe a minute or so. And as it's running here, just showing you how simple it is. It's just a simple launch, no prompt or anything. I'll give you 2 pieces of information. The first is we have this. Okay, that was a little bit quicker than I thought. We have this rule scheduled to run 3 times a day, in the morning around noon, and then later at night at like 8 or 9 o'clock. And then it's also used to be able to run by user. Now, the purpose of this is, as you may be able to guess or come up with by the name, it aggregates the data to a top level. I'll show you what I mean. So since chemistry seems to be the cost center of the day, I'll keep going back to it. We enter in data at something called level 0, just our bottom intersection of cost center and department. So for chemistry, if I were to enter in some data and then I want to go in and see that same data at the all departments view, I would expect if I entered in 500,000 on line 57101 that I would see 500,000. Not immediately. The reason for that is there is this calculation script that I've been talking about here, the Ag Plan 1, that needs to be ran, and it takes the data at all levels and just works its way up the department and cost center hierarchy so that we can see the data at the top level. The reason this is important is some of these reports are based off seeing all department view or all E&G cost centers, all designated tuition cost centers. And if some people, a common problem that comes up to me is, hey, Ryan, the data's not updating, and look, I've put in my 500,000 for account 57101, and then I don't see it. And then I have to remind everyone that this is a top level department, and we have to aggregate the data. So let's just do that real quick to make the example clear. So 57101 is what we were looking at. Cancel. So if I were to enter in this value and I go back to my all departments, I don't see it, but hey, just have to kick this off. So while this one is running, I will tell you that the reports that run off of our RP1 cube or our RP2 cube, those ASO cubes that we discuss, which the majority of reports do run off of, you don't need to worry about running these. They aggregate on their own, as it is in the name, they're aggregate storage cubes. So that's another benefit of the reporting cube. But if we're looking at the forms or any reports that we have that pull directly off Plan 1, you'll note that we do have to enter in this data. So now, yes, at our all departments view for chemistry, we do see our 500,000 data right here. Okay, so let me go back to chemistry just to clear it out. Even though we haven't started, just like to be safe and get it back to where it is. Okay, so that concludes going through the task list. Now, since some of you have been in the system before and are more familiar or accustomed to doing revenue and expense updates another way, let's discuss that and see if that's the way you'd like to continue going, at least for this year or years forward. I don't know what your long-term plans are to opening up to department users where they could just go in and enter in their expenses here on a form like this, or even in SmartView showing the same form. But I did want to give this option of how others sometimes do it, where they enter in the appropriation value and then enter in their expenses, go to the bottom level, check that they tie out, and kind of promote it up to a budget office user. But since you guys are all doing it centrally, let's talk about that method. But one more item before we do that, just a heads up. I know I said these aren't reports, they're not, but if you want to see it in a smart view, or sorry, in an Excel spreadsheet view and get it out of here in planning, you could do that as well, where I'll show you again that pathway. But just going tools, export, I now see that same form. You'll note that this form was shown to open up by period. That's something we could change to, at least for when it goes into Excel. But we have our same columns just immediately, and our budget 17, 18. We would only need the year total, so if I wanted to, I could clear out here. I would probably change the form if need be, but just giving you the heads up that that's something we could do as well. That was going tools and export a spreadsheet where we could see the same data in Excel if that's something that you just wanted to send to a user that didn't have access to Hyperion itself, but you wanted to show them the data. Okay, so let's go into SmartView. So here's something that I mentioned on some of my phone calls with a couple of you that would be a little bit different than years past. In years past, mainly Marie and maybe a little bit of help from others would go through and change the account level for each for all cost centers and departments showing, and then enter in the data, probably doing VLOOKUPs from your other offline spreadsheets or templates that are provided to you. Here's something that we could do that I think would be a lot easier and hopefully agreed from your perspective, where here's a template that I've used for El Paso, and it's something that I could use for you guys as well, where I just provide this. If you give me the account number, so let's say we're talking non-salary accounts, so I'm not always sure on them, but let's just say, for example, A 20000, and it goes to our department. The reason that have put in the prefix here is because that's the name of the member within Hyperion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cost center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. And we're starting with our FY19 data. You would just copy this down as I have it shown. Version, if we loaded it to baseline, that's what we do. And we're putting in $1,500. All that we have to do is then connect to SmartView, hit Plan 1, and hit Submit Data. And that would be the way where we could populate that immediately. So that's something that if you give me a template like this, I would open up the connection to SmartView and just do one big submit data, and it would populate these FY19 accounts as needed. If that is the way that you guys choose to go, which I think because of all the templates that you've received from departments, it sounds like that's the quickest way for you to do it. Also, since you don't seed the budget from FY18 data. So what I'll do is after this meeting, I plan on sending a couple documents to you, and this would be one of them. I just have this titled UTT data load format. Now, if you choose to do it in the years past, I just think that you had to go and make so many changes, and it was sometimes slow because there were so many cost centers and departments being pulled, that if you are able to load it this way and this format, then it's really a quick process. Is this something that would work for you guys if you choose to go this way, this type of format? You have all the data, really just the account, department, cost center. We know that year will be FY19, and then data. Pretty much these columns right here. I'm not sure if you guys are muted on that end.
Hi, Ryan. Yes, we were. We didn't want to bore
Okay.
you with our internal talk, but this looks very efficient from what we can tell. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I kind of thought it was myself as well. Just from working with others in the past, this seems like anyone. I know some of the spreadsheets that you guys have. If you're able just to keep it in this format, which you should be able to copy and paste it in, I think that's a real quick starting point for
Awesome.
FY19. Okay, well that's good. So what that would do when we submit data, because to those that aren't as familiar with Hyperion as a budgeting tool, it does have something called SmartView. SmartView connects directly to in Excel, what I have the SmartView tab here, to Hyperion. So I do want to talk more about SmartView, but I have that later on in my little training guide that I've put for myself, the outline. So we'll kind of do a big transition here. What we went over here in our phase 1 of this training, or I guess phase 1 of today's training, was just entering in the data for our different forms, how we do that, the key aggregate plan 1 business rule or script that we have to run. And once again, that does run 3 times a day on schedule, but if you need to see data immediately at a top level, then it takes, looked more to me like 15, 20 seconds to run. So kick that off, and that will have data roll up to the top levels for you. And then we looked at doing that SmartView template, which we only looked at here for a couple minutes, but it seems like an efficient way to do a load. So let's transition into the reports, and we'll get more into SmartView here in a few minutes. Before doing so, let me just take a drink of water. Excuse me. Okay, so let's close out of our application here. And we are still looking at Workspace. We logged in. Here, just give me one more second here. Let me mute myself. Okay, I'm back. Had to clear my throat, and it was probably something that no one wanted to hear. So we'll
We
move.
understand.
We'll move forward. Okay, so now we're moving into reports, and we saw what we would consider form reports, reports on the forms in that reports folder, and a little bit in that budget office folder. But the majority of our reports come in this Explore tab up here. So I'll go ahead and hit Explore, and you'll see that we have a couple subfolders pop up. One is budget book reports. The second is shared workspace pages. That won't really ever be used. And the third is users. Now for users, I see my account. You'll see your own account. You could create folders. Here you have a lot of access. If you wanted to do a UTT budget office group, for example, that's something that we could save and create. And the reason for that is once you're trained on creating reports, instead of kind of piling up all the reports into this primary folder, the budget office budget books report, you could have new views, and I'll show you how to save and create reports here. Other campuses really have taken advantage of that, and I know that that's something that we could probably improve in here on Tyler's side. So we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. So let's look at the back up to our root here, and we have budget book reports, and then there's a subfolder UT Tyler. The reason for that, even though I probably don't need to explain it, is just because from an admin point of view, I have also UTA, UTEP, all the other campuses, and I set security at that level to make it commonality. So logged in as a UTT person will only see UTT's folder. And then we have a list of folders here, and these folders will make up the reports that get turned into the budget book, and additionally some other reports that will just be useful, and hopefully reports that we can modify to become more useful and possibly save into your own UTT budget office folder or your own user account folder. So before getting into the budget book, let's start with web analysis reports. That's one of the three reporting tools that we have. We have FR or Financial Reporting Studio reports. We have web analysis reports, and then we have Smart View reports. So the first is web analysis. That's kind of similar to Smart View, although it's made in a more user-friendly or pre-made format, which I've always been a fan of. One of the reports that didn't open in my quote-unquote form report in that reports folder was an all accounts by Costner. So we have reports in here that I think are very useful. Of course, this one's not pulling data. I'd have to look at why real quick. Let me do so. Oops. Well, that's a strike. Strike one there. That's not supposed to happen. Let's see what number two is, and I'll look at this right here. I know that other campuses, we've been digging deep into these reports, and they're working for us. So I'm a little surprised what's going on here. Maybe it's based off FY18 right now. You see you have this drop down, which we did have FY18 data in the system. So I am a little unsure why not picking up what we would expect to pick up here. Part of me is wondering if it's since I created this user account, let me try one thing if you guys don't mind. Let me log in as my main admin account, and I'll have you guys test this on your end too, to see if you're not able to get access. I think I probably just didn't give myself report view access. Um,
Okay.
I'm hoping that's the case. Otherwise, that's strike 2 for me, and we don't want to get to strike 3. So let's try that again over here. Um, so I tried opening this one. Okay, good. So
Okay.
I forgive myself at least. Hopefully you guys forgive me. I'll have you try after the call or if someone's logged in. But I
Okay.
mean that tells me that I just need it. When I created that RP_UTT account, I left um, part of my security account access for reports off, which is okay. So what we see here is our all accounts by cost interview, what we were talking about before. I think this is something where we may have discussed it in an email, but it gives us just a view of I mean, it's pretty much in the name, just all of our cost centers here in the rows, and then the columns will build out high level accounts. We have a couple formulas built in there, total expenses plus fringe and some other items, just to give you a view. Um, Now, kind of moving forward, what you saw me doing there to a web analysis lesson. This isn't what this training's for, but if you did see a report like this and you go to the drop down and you want FY19, I should have those updated for you. I haven't got to Tyler's yet, but they're very simple. Where this little data layout cube, which you see here, pulls is how the report is built. So, for example, if I wanted to move entity over here so that we saw a cost center and entity view, the department as well, I could do that. Or if you just want to simply update the members that we see in our drop-down list, this is something where hopefully you users could get more familiar with it. So if I drop down 19 and even 20 for next year, so I don't have to do it again, and hit apply, and I'll hide this. Now I see 19 and 20 as well. So what I would do is I would probably hit my FY19. We see a lot of data disappear, but I'll still save it so that next time anyone comes in and tries to open it from your standpoint, you'll see the timestamp changes only because I saved it, not because the data's been updated. But now I have a new report. I see that this one changed. Joe is working on updating reports right now, so he and I are in the same area. That's okay. I see that just coincidental timing. That's the only reason I bring it up. But here's a report that's usually useful. I'll show you one more thing. Let's say that you wanted to customize it a little bit where, hey, the accounts I want to see just for a simple report would be, I'm just making an example here, just my total income and expense for all cost centers. So I apply that. Here are a couple formulas that I would take out. The only thing I care about is my total income and expense. Let's go. My mouse has been double clicking lately, so I apologize for that. But it took a jump into what I was trying to show next. So let's go and say I apply here. So I have total income and expense. Let me, just because I'm a little annoyed by it, go to right click and then there's analysis tools. I don't expect everyone to pick this up right away. We'll go into deeper training on it, but I'm removing the calculations so that this form becomes a lot cleaner. And now for all our cost centers, I see my total income and expense. It makes complete sense for FY19 that everything is negative, being that we have no revenues entered in yet. It's mainly just showing our total salary by cost center totals here. But the cool thing is, similar to Smart View, which will show this as well, I could just double click on total income and expense, and now all of a sudden I see all my expenses and all my revenues. Once again, no revenues, but let's say I want to see one more level of expenses here. So this is just based off our tree. Now I could see my fringe, debt service, expense transfers, and reserve. Not the best example. Once again, I'm trying to drill that in only because for FY19 we have salaries, but let's just populate it by going to FY18. And just quickly like that, we see all our revenue and our total expenses and then our total income and expense. And that could be a useful report right here. So I could go File, Save As, and the point of me doing all this change to the report is so I can show the file save as, where the reports you'll see in this web analysis folder are kind of templates, reports that I provide. But if you want to customize them or share them with other users, that's where you could go into your users folder. I'll see a ton of users. You'll only see yourself or other folders you create. And I created this UTT budget office folder. So I could just save as here. UTT, well, you wouldn't call it UTT. I always put the name of the campus on so I could differentiate, but let's just say campus total income and expense report.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
Quick question. I'm glad you went into 18 because I had a question. Is there a way to filter this down to just get operating revenue and operating expenses? So, like say if we want to know, I mean, I know that the financial reporting side, they do their MFR and that reporting, but is there a way from here to see like what our, basically, if we're operating at a surplus or deficit right now? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. At least with the FY18 data. So
Yes, with
before doing that, let me see. Okay, so there isn't already a well, actually, this operating statement that Joe's working on might be that right now. Okay, so this is showing adjustments in actual, so but this is based off the operating statement account. So for here, what I would do, and you'll have to kind of help me on this because we'll work more offline together, but I'll just show you. So this shows all our cost centers, and if you wanted to see, so here I have our current columns selected. I'll remove those. Sounds like you wanted to see the operating statement.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the operating statement. If we wanted to do something like operating revenue at a high level, and then operating expenses at a high level,
mm-hmm.
I would just go and apply that, pick up our data, and just because I like to play with it, if you right-click, go Analysis Tools, I could set up where there's just a calculation to do revenue minus expenses. But from your standpoint, your viewpoint, I'll show you one more thing that will probably even be better. Hopefully this is just what you're looking for. So I go like that. So now this pre-made report would show a difference of revenue versus expenses based off the operating statement tree. So there is that caveat in there if there's accounts that you may have different. But the other thing that you can do with web analysis that is needed to be known is go File, Export, and then once you go to export, you have all these different options. For us, for myself, 99.99% of the time, I want to export into Excel. So you could do fully formatted, query ready, which would be Smart View, or unformatted. I like to go unformatted because once I'm putting in an Excel, I plan to change it up and put it into my own format here. So what I have here that I'm just showing is now that's in Excel. Whoops, what's going on in Excel? So Excel froze on me. Let's see. I have my Skype cover on top, so it's I can't hit the minimize. So point being, I mean, you guys are familiar with Excel. I would just copy this and paste the values into a different tab. That's usually what I do. And then that allows you to play around where you wouldn't even need the difference. You can make the difference within Excel itself. Not quite sure why Excel's locking up on me here.
Ryan, while you were doing Excel magic, we had another thought.
Yeah.
You know, since I did request this just for, you know, for this current year, but would it be taken into account balances that roll forward, which would then offset any shortages, or is this just showing 18? Which I did want 18, but I'm just not sure if it would include.
Is it including account code 30,000, which is your balance roll forward, or just expense? It's only expense and fees. Yeah.
So you're saying here in operating revenue and operating expenses?
Uh-huh.
So let's take a look, because I'm not quite sure. We'll find out though.
Okay.
So
maybe another account that we might need to pick up, but go ahead.
So this report, what we did is we have the option. Everything's based off of our hierarchies here. So this operating statement hierarchy, we'll have to drill into. So we could drill in here, but I like to just go into where it's actually built, which is right here within planning. So I see my account, and I'll go ahead and once again go into all accounts. And if you gave me the account that you were curious about, I could search on it and see if it's in there.
30,000.
Okay, that's easy enough. So I'll do a search on it. So I see 30,000 is under ending balance, and we're looking for it to be under all accounts. But no, it seems like that's the only place that it exists. So if that's supposed to be part of the all accounts hierarchy, then that's something that we can move. We did do a lot of cleanup on this tree, so I'm not sure if it does exist there, because I think, I mean, to my knowledge, how we built it is operating statement tree.
Right.
AFR tree is a shared tree. So you'll note that a lot of the accounts are where it says shared. It's the same account that we'll see under our KK accounts tree.
And I mean, I'm just talking out loud, I'm just trying to get a picture. You're right, it probably wouldn't be, hierarchy there with operating revenues and expenses.
Go ahead, sorry.
And then in there.
Here's what's cool about Hyperion with web analysis, and I'm always biased, so I say it's cool a lot. You guys may disagree. But let's see. So it was under ending balance. Let me just go back real quick and see where we were at. So ending balance, which was not under KK. So that may not currently exist, but that's something that I could add if need be. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Let me put descriptions, IDs. So ending balance, there's our A3000. So if I wanted to move that up here, just so that we could get the reporting view, because we have that data. So just a heads up that I'll change it back so that we don't see IDs. Whoops. So that we could actually see the name. This is reliant on, in the past, if you budgeted to A30,000, because I'm suppressing the data. So if there's no data underneath A30,000, then that line won't show up. But that's something that we could easily do, where if you did decide to do that ending balance, right now it's just not a automatic process where that account gets populated.
Sure. And that's okay. I mean, even as long as I can get it, if I have to do it manually, that's okay too.
Sure. Okay. Let me not
I'm just
see
trying to get that way. We're looking at apples analysis.
Yeah. So even my point though is, even though it's not in the same hierarchy roll up, if that account existed and it did have data, that would be something that we could just throw in here, because we're building the accounts to create our report any way that we want. Another cool thing is, right now we're showing FY18 data. If I wanted, just to kind of show you the power of web analysis, and same for SmartView since it's similar. If I wanted a report to show the difference between FY18 and FY19 for revenue and expenses, and that difference as well, then I could just pull the years here underneath the account, hit apply. I have to reselect that we're looking at baseline. But once I do that, just reports like this where you could do your save as views. So now I see, I mean, I probably would put 19 and then 18, just me, but I could do a little comparison here to see the difference in our values really quickly, and then put that in Excel if need be, to get a prettier view on the difference. So, I mean, you can see how quickly that comes. We're just able to pull data and kind of like a query in PeopleSoft, just get that report generated. So let me close out of here. I guess I'll just emphasize once more. So far we've only looked at the all accounts. Let me just show some other reports that are available to us. Here's a comparison by year. This report pulls from RP1, meaning it will aggregate on its own, and it also gives us some more information, like it will show the fund, so fund 2100 Nakubo, or function 700, and then we see just the high level total expenses and FTE for that cost center. Close out. There's a detailed version of that report where it's showing more accounts, most likely. Yep. So I think this is the one I wanted to show. The difference is off, of course, but it does show every single account for a cost center with the fund and function with a year difference here. And I think that might be a high level view of something that could be useful. Here's a report called the original budget. Let's take a look at that. Most of these reports should open in under 20 seconds, but if they take a little bit longer, then just let me know if it seems to be spazzing out on you ever. So this report's just a different view of, looks like the VP level or higher level of your cost centers here. So cost center roll-ups, and by some higher level roll-ups to the accounts, like your M&O, your wages, scholarship, fellowships. Here's for FY19. We'll go quickly to FY18 and just like that get the snapshot of our data. So before I forget, just one more thing. If you do make any changes, since you guys are not admins, but you're like one level below with a lot of similar access, you probably can hit save on a lot of these reports, but I ask that you probably hit save as and create another report name, either in this folder or in a different folder, like the one that we created just as an example, just so that we keep the templates consistent. A few more things. Let's see, original budget with all cost centers, all accounts by cost center, and then original budget with cost center. I'm not sure just off the top of my head what the difference is between those. We'll take a quick look. So all these reports here are just meant to give you a good budgeting tool or assisting tool to be able to see just data in certain formats and export it into Excel if you need. So that's there. You'll see, I mean, it's not a competition, but just as a heads up, once you get more familiar, like here is UT Arlington, they have a few more reports in there, reports that you can see certain users have saved and created, not just me, the admin. San Antonio's done something where they have created this folder called Budget Office that's only available to them with security, and then their users have gone and created all these accounts too, or reports, I mean. So there is a lot of opportunity here to see reports at different levels. And one thing here that I didn't see in our Tyler template is by version. So once we copy from baseline to a new version, we could see the changes that have been made from our starting point to any differences that have been made. But let's go back to Tyler right here. And the last thing is these 4 reports. We opened them last week, so I don't need to get into them again, I don't think. But we have reports that show just salary roster information, and those are usually liked or used quite often. So I'll just open another one. Here's an FY19 versus FY18 report. For whatever reason, it seems like the reports that run off this RP2 cube, which is our reporting cube for salary data, takes just a little bit longer, maybe closer to 45 seconds. So I know we talked about this last time, but this just is a report that would show all our employees by the funding cost in their funding department and their position right here, and show the differences from FY19 to FY18. You'll see one that's purely just for FY19, and then one report that we've been working on and haven't released completely is a report that gives the home department, so the owning department of the position, and then also the funding department, as we know that sometimes changes and isn't always consistent. So I'll let this report open up quickly, and then we will move on. This report has some more data, so it takes just a little bit longer to run, but we're happy with this report because it in the past we've always only had the funding department. Now we're getting closer to a salary roster where we could have, hey, here's every department that these positions belong to, but then also additionally the funding department. So university college, I see an example here where this position exists here in University College, but it gets paid by at least in portion to this different department. So we're continuing to work on that, and once we finalize it, we'll release it to everyone, and with the purpose of creating more of a salary roster that's available to all users, or at least budget office users. So let me close out here. We've gone through the web analysis. Now let's go through the others. So I'm in Explore. I go to the UTT folder again. And those are our web analysis reports. We do have one other section of reporting that is ran off of web analysis as well. And that is our object of expense. So let me go to that folder. This is a report that gets used every year, and I know talking with Alan Warchin at System, it's something he is high on, and hopefully, I'm not sure if it's been used in its fullest extent in years past, but it seems to be something that's had some of the kinks taken out of, where now it's working pretty well. So there's two versions of this report. Forget about this Excel version here. That's outdated and could be deleted. I think it's hidden most likely from you. But you'll see UTT OOE and UTT OOE summary. Let's start with the UTT OOE summary, object of expense summary, where this would be kind of your starting page where you see the fund level, all of the Nakubo roll-ups to that fund, and then the high-level FTE budget. Once again, I'll go to FY18 just so that I get the full view of data here. Now I have some more lines, as you see. So for E&G, we'll see our instruction adds up here. Just the object of expense, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with or getting familiar with. That gets turned in, and it's a good report to also see your total expenses broken down. So that's the summary page. To get the detail, we would open this UTT OOE. We'll go ahead and do that. With these reports, you could either double click or you could right click and hit open. So here's what's kind of cool. It's based off, runs off of the department order. So here right now, you'll see in our point of view, I have instruction selected. So it's giving me every cost center that is underneath instruction with the fund that comes along with it. So our Nakubo is instruction, our fund is differing by cost center, but designated, it's in here, ENG, so on and so forth. And it just is based off of our columns up top with the format that is needed to turn in. And the way that you can see other views is, so hey, we saw our instruction, let's take a look at academic support. I'll go ahead and hit academic support. And just like that, in the snap of the fingers, thankfully it's ran pretty quickly, we get now our cost centers that are tied into academic support. So these reports both are here in web analysis, and in order to get it into more of an Excel view, you once again would go to your file, export, Excel, unformatted. Hopefully this doesn't freeze up my Excel this time. Don't know what was going on last time. So it didn't like me trying to copy an Excel for whatever reason. But here's what I do. I just paste it here in values. And then all of a sudden we have the report pretty much pulling in the exact data that we need. And you get the fun of trying to put it in whatever format that you would desire. But the way that I would do it is I would say, probably title this OE, academic support. And just pull in all your columns that way, where this is your academic support data, this is your instruction, and just pull that into Excel and do the same thing as need be when you're ready to finalize it. Beforehand, you could just, of course, go to your different Nakubos up here and pick the data that you need. FY19 may not populate each section for us immediately. Any questions on the object of expense?
I don't think so, Ryan. All this looks great, and I'm sure once we start diving into it, it'll be more helpful to us.
Sure. And I mean, just another thing where we don't want to change too many things, but if you wanted to save as and create your own report, I have all the accounts selected for the columns, but say, hey, you know what would be useful, even though the report doesn't require it? Let's just go ahead and put all revenue right here on top so that we could see the revenue. And if I'm able to drag, there I go. And just do something like that so that you can see a revenue once again if you're trying to tie out. So now I have revenue in the report. So the only reason I'm showing these little things, useful or not useful, is that it gives us the opportunity to see what's capable within some of these reporting tools. And I'll just mention as well, I tell you these things so that you could do them if you so choose, but we are more than happy to do them here. If you say, hey, Ryan, add revenue to a report. Hey, Ryan, give us a different view that shows the A30,000 account. That's something that's part of our job as well, so we'll do it. But sometimes users that get a little bit more savvy with this like to make the updates themselves, and both are acceptable. So don't feel like you need to hold back if you forget or anything like that. Just say, Ryan, make a change, and I'll more than happy make a change. And some of these reports need building from scratch, and that's something that we would definitely do on our side.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so back to our our folder here. We see UTT. We've looked at all of our web analysis reports. The other day we looked at some of these edit reports that are web analysis as well. So let's move on to another reporting tool called financial reporting. That's where our D page report and our white page report pull from. So we'll start with the D page report. For Tyler, there's a separate section that doesn't include benefits. I created that in the year past just because it's the code on the report is a little bit different. So I mean, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not sure if the main report right now is pulling benefits or not, but let's just look at one without the benefits. And you could either double click on these reports and you'll see that you have your point of view as usual, and it comes out like this, but that's not quite as friendly or useful in my opinion. So if you go right click and open in PDF preview, if you want to do a quick view, you could just see the data itself. But if you wanted to do see it here in Adobe, where you could print it off, this is kind of what we get turned in the format. So we see our FY18 totals and our FY19. The data rolls up based off our element of cost hierarchy, which I alluded to earlier with one of the reports that we saw, but it's also will be talked about more on our Tuesday meeting tomorrow, because I need to remind everyone about it, but it's just the cost centers that roll up to every section and then generate a report like this. So the D-page report is pretty easy to run. It's just the right click and open in PDF preview. And then same for our white pages. There's different sections of the report that build out this entire report, the E pages, I should say. But then the bottom line is something shown as a book, this little green book here. So I'd hit right click, open in incomplete book in PDF. So once it does that, here it is over here, just a little table of contents gets generated. And then here's where your e-page report gets populated and what you would just have in the format to be able to print out. So all the different sections of the report here. Once again, based off the element of cost, that's what we'll see in our upper left-hand corner of this. So I mean, without going into the details so deeply, because we're not here to analyze the data, just overall concept, here is just where this report would be. So before I go too much further, let me just give a heads up, and hopefully this is a good thing. One of the other documents that I'm sending out is, excuse me, I can't see the title because it's blocked for me. Let me see if I can minimize. Just Hyperion reporting documentation.
Okay.
And that's just going to go over all the steps that we've talked about so far. Budget book reports, how to open each section. It starts with some other ones here. Let's see. There's another one that I'll have to send you. These are just for the Smart View reports, the next section that we'll look at. And then I also have another piece of documentation I want to send out that shows you how to download and install Smart View if you have not done so already, because Smart View is our next step to go into. But I did want to mention that don't worry, I know it's being recorded. I'll send this out to you, but sometimes just having some of this on paper is helpful, and that's hopefully what we'll do here with some of these post-training documents that I'll send your way.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So that's the majority of the budget book that gets populated there with that D and E pages, but then we have our sections of the report based off the fund, and those are in this folder, the other budget book. So if I go here to the root again and look at other budget book reports, you'll see what I have loaded here. Excuse me. And I'll look mainly at our F through K pages. The B and C pages I'll talk about afterwards. And here I think is the document that showed how these all, oh, that's Smart View, where to open all these and the steps to populate the data and run them. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let me go back here and start with the F page report. So either a right click open or a double click. I have not updated them for FY19 yet. don't freeze on me again. Oh, Excel does not like me right now. There we go. So all I'm doing here is uploading or opening up a pre-made Excel form or spreadsheet, and what we need to do is connect to SmartView. So the steps will help us with that. I'll go kind of quickly, knowing that we do have steps, but ask me any questions that do pop up. So with all these, here's our F pages. If we go to panel and hit shared connections, we could log into planning, and I see my UTT budget. I was logged in as my user earlier, and this is based off plan 1, so we pull directly from that revenue expense cube. So all I have to do is double click here, and I'm connected. I can hit reuse the sheet contents in POV if that pops up, and now my data gets updated. I'm not sure if you saw that. So I like to drag this point of view thing up here. If I need to change the year, which I will for FY19, we could do that. I'll upload templates with the updated point of view. More importantly for you is if you need to change versions, here's where you would do that. Excuse me. So we see our service centers, which would be our F-page rollup, and here's the magic trick to it, where we have in SmartView our zoom in button here. We hit the drop down and hit bottom levels, and it pulls in all the cost centers that are underneath this fund level. So there aren't too many here for the F pages, but the way the report is set up, it gives us the accounts that we need. And then if I go to, oh wow, this is weird. Let's see. Let me start over just because something is going off where my tabs are hiding. Excel does not like me right now. Okay, here we go. So it's supposed to open with multiple tabs. I don't know what was going on there. So this tab, the SmartView data, I'll connect to plan 1. I see my data update for FY18. And what we need to do is get to the cost centers that roll up here. So I go zoom in, bottom level. Excuse me. So once I get the cost centers to pull up, I go to this next tab, Service F Pages. And you'll see that I just do a little formula to pull in the data and put in the proper formulas that may be needed. And with that being said, so it pulls in the data. And now we're in Excel. So if you need to add a beginning balance or an ending balance, you'll see that there's some formulas to try to populate all of these columns. But here's where you would do it, which, because it's not always entered in Hyperion, some of these accounts, this is the way we make it happen. And the way that this report is built is by hitting print. It has the layout saved where all of a sudden it's ready to be part of our budget book and the right layout. The only piece that differs per each campus is the formatting. So if you need to, I'm not sure how you do it, but if you add columns, so on and so forth, then that's where you could do it here. Sorry, commas, not columns, or put the $sign. And then the last step would be, we have all these additional lines where I'm just pulling in data in case there's more cost centers. I would just go ahead and delete those all out, move on up, and my report would be ready to print like that. So hopefully that makes some sense to you. This bottom line is a total. If you wanted to rename it, then you could simply just do Service Centers Total, your call on that. So let's walk through one more. So that would be the F pages. Let's go back up here and look at maybe our G pages designated. Same thing, so we just open it in Excel. We'll see that we have our Smart View tab, and then our next tab that's supposed to be the formatting version. And once we're connected to Smart View, it's nice. It just populates this way where all I need to do is double click on this Plan 1 here on the right hand section. I'll see once again my data updates. This one gives me a lot more data, so this will be a more useful exercise. So if I go zoom in and bottom level, I now see all my cost centers that roll up to the designated with different accounts. So now if I go here into our formatted view, you'll see that some of these columns are getting populated just based off the formulas. It's pulling from different accounts from our Hyperion data that you've entered in, and then giving us the totals that we need for each column. And same thing there, where just a nice print should get us into the place where we could just print off this report and get it to our budget book pretty quickly. So the same logic follows for the H, I, J, and K pages. It's just the zoom in bottom level and get in all the cost centers that roll up. The reason that we don't do, let's see. The reason that I made it this way where we're not pulling in the cost centers already at bottom level is during the budget season we add in new cost centers. So the only way that we can ensure that we're picking up all cost centers that roll up to the designated level or the service center level, service fund level, is to have that top level and then zoom into the bottom levels. So if you were asking yourself on the other side why there's that extra step, I'd only be able to put current cost centers on here right now and pull in the data, which I could easily and provide it to you, but then we would have to go and enter in the other cost centers that get added throughout the year, which we do not want to do. That's an additional step, and we possibly can miss data that way. So that's just the way that we've been running these reports for the last couple years. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions on the F through K pages? So another thing where the more you go through it, the more familiar you'll get and easier it will be, and hopefully something you're pretty comfortable with. So the other two reports are ones that don't get uploaded directly to the budget book. I think there's a template provided through System, but there's still data that I try to provide in the B pages and the C pages that could hopefully be useful. So we'll see there's a B1 and a B2 section where if you look at the report documentation, it says connect to the UTT RP1 cube for these. So I'll do that. And I'll do the same here. And what that does is it will pull up updated data for me. And then, like I said, this is not a formatted view, but it tries to give us just information that may be useful for you. The operating or the object of expense probably provides the same thing for the B, but I know that it's been requested if we could create the B page report in Hyperion. Well, probably is the answer. It's just in years past, everyone seems to throw it into a template. And then the same for the C. The C, I think there's just a data dump that gets provided to you, really no format at all. Yeah, so here's the C page report. For same thing, I would just connect to Smart View, update my data that way. We'll see the numbers change a little bit right in front of us. And it gives us just the view here of hopefully information that's useful. But once again, you could pull that off of other reports because I know that you get provided a template to create your B page and C page reports. So hopefully that makes some sense. That's kind of all the reports. Now, in our little time left, I may not even use all of it, but I do want to mention something that I brought up earlier, which was Smart View, where if you so choose to, if you go to Smart View and go to Planning, where you would typically connect to your reports for the F through whatever it was, G pages, E, F, G, H, I, J pages, K pages, you would connect through Plan 1. Well, you'll see that you also have here something called Forms and Task Lists. And that task list, if you drill into it, you'll note that it's the exact same task list that we see over here. And what that means is we're able to go into the forms the same way as we do in planning. I prefer myself to go into planning and see the forms that way. But if you wanted to, you have the ability to go through the forms this way, where I still have my chemistry here, and I'll just show you how it's kind of cool. So let's go back to chemistry as well. So this 57101, we were messing with that earlier. There's no value in there. But if I see it here, same thing, where if I wanted to enter in a $100 expense, I have the opportunity to hit submit data. And it's just, well, let's see, so that disappeared on me. Oh, that's at year total. Let's see. Trying to collapse it here. That one's an actual strike one. I don't know why that didn't save. Let's see. So I'm at chemistry. Bear with me here. I'm not sure what I have going on. It's not supposed to do that. But if I do refresh, I should get the $100 that I entered in planning. So it gives you the opportunity to enter in that budget here in Smart View and have it roll in. It doesn't like me entering in at the year total value. It usually likes a level 0 member, although you're able to here within planning. So that's just a tweak that I'll have to make. I'm not sure why it's doing that. But just giving you the heads up where you could open up these forms, and so it wants you to enter in at a month value. Being that we're not budgeting by month, you could put it in any of these and just see it roll up to the year total. Here is that 100. If I put in 200, maybe it will work this time, maybe because it was 0 before. No, okay, so there will be a setting that would need to be changed to allow it at the year total within Smart View. But if you just enter it in at a monthly budget, then that's all it does. Submit the data back to 0, and hopefully upon refresh here, we have it back to 0 as well. So just giving you the heads up, everyone that we work with at other campuses seem to enter in the budget here just on the forms. But if you wanted to send out like a template or even a live template where they could enter in that data, you do have those options to do so in Smart View. There's just that live connection to be able to have it go in Excel and then back to planning. So that is one of the advantages to the Hyperion system, having that smart view connection. Okay, so you may have questions on that, but if not, we went through our task list items. If you ever do decide to move that route, or at least maybe do a review process where you looked at the forms from setting the allocations all the way down to the different fund levels. Then we looked at the Smart View template, which I will send out right after this, which gives you just a way to do a mass upload if you so choose, if you have that data available to you. Just a reminder, we looked at the aggregate plan 1 calc script, allowing us to see the data at a higher level. One area that we need to make sure we run that for is let's look at the G pages just as an example. This is one of the common questions that I get when people are looking at their data. Since when we connect for these F and G and H and I and J and K reports, we're doing so connecting, if you recall, going to plan 1, just double clicking on plan 1. So being that it's on plan 1, we need to make sure that we run the aggregate plan 1 for this purpose. Wrong report. For this purpose, because eventually I'll get there, are pulling at the total entity level, the all departments level. So we want to make sure that we can see the data rolled up to that level. So that's where you'll want to run the Ag Plan 1 most frequently. So we looked at that, and then we went into reports, jumped there. We looked at the web analysis reports, how to save them in different locations, and then how to kind of change the format a little bit or change different members. Just to reiterate, feel free until we get into deeper training for sure, to just put in a ticket if you need me to update reports or create a new report. There are some reports out there I may not even know about because Joe texted me during this meeting and said, hey, he finalized this AFR operating statement. So that's a new report that is going to be provided to all the campuses, just showing an actuals to budget to adjusted budget for everyone, apparently. So things like that we could customize and may or may not be useful. Hopefully they are. Then we looked at the reports that are ran out of financial reporting that get generated in Adobe for us right away. Those would be our D page report and our white pages section of the budget book. And then the remaining items of the budget book get produced out of this other budget book section. And those you have to connect to SmartView in order to generate. So we have 8 minutes left. We could end 8 minutes earlier if you have any questions or anything you wanted me to show. Here would be the time to do so.
I think I have just one simple question. It should not take 8 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Just so I can have something in my head. We have our templates that are due. We're reviewing those changes internally that we sent out to our end users. Just give me, I guess, the sequential order of what needs to happen next, just the steps from an overview standpoint, if you can.
Yeah, definitely. So the template load that we'll do will be only for Plan 1. So even if you included on this template salary accounts, those salary accounts will be overwritten from the data that populates from the HCP cube, gets pushed over. But I think your call on this one. If you want to work on this template first and load that to get all the expenses and revenues ready for the operating, then you could do that first, and then you could have us reload the position data to pick up any changes that have happened over the last 2 months when it was originally loaded. And or we could do that vice versa. The only reason I would say to do this template first is so that we pick up just the maximum amount of position data that's been uploaded in PeopleSoft.
I agree.
To get the latest salaries, even though likely it will probably be within a day of each other that we're doing both of these.
Okay.
And then once we do that, you guys have all the data in, and it would be the time to make any changes to the position side, finalize that, make any changes needed at the revenue expense after the templates. You may find that some adjustments are needed based to balance, and then you're already running the reports and at that point where you could do what you need to do.
Okay. I think that all I had. I just needed to hear a little general GPS direction there.
Yeah, sure. So do you think that is this week the week that you were hoping to get this data all loaded into the system?
Well, I don't know, Ryan. Let me tell you what we're doing. We sent out templates, and that's kind of it's a manual process, and quite frankly, it's just real time consuming.
Right.
And all four of us were trying to, go through them, update them, and then go through a review stage. And we have been told from higher ups that there is supposed to be no new spending. Okay, and that's coming from the president level.
Right.
And so, I thought Friday, and I asked some people in here, and I said, okay, if there's no new spending, and from what I've been told directly from the president's office is, there's none. So can't we take, last year's, and because people are requesting all kinds of things, and it's just taking a lot of back and forth, and it's very inefficient.
Sure.
So long story short, we're compiling a list of all of those requests. I'm going to give those to the VP of Business, and I don't know if he'll be able to say yay or nay, or if they actually have to go to the cabinet president level to confirm that. I would assume the president would be the one to have to say, to provide the approval if there is any new spending allowed. So I'm hoping that we've got several meetings besides this one today, so we probably can't touch them today maybe, but I'm hoping tomorrow. One person has already finished her compilation, so I'm hoping the rest of us can finish ours.
Okay.
Tomorrow, if possible, and then I can at least then give that list to VP and say, okay, is this yay or nay? Then we would have to make whatever change Marie would in the master spreadsheet so that gets included.
Right.
Then, so I'm hoping this week we'll at least have all that settled. I hope. I just don't know, but we should. I mean, I don't see why we can't.
Sure. Well, I mean, to me, it's not a deadline where I push things on you. I was just curious from my viewpoint,
Sure.
and I'm willing to assist once you do get started with any problems that you encounter, of course.
But just so I know, Ryan, because I don't have the institutional history here, when is too, I trust some guidance on saying, okay, y'all really need to go ahead and have a load. So tell me what kind of time frame I'm dealing with. So I don't have the history to know that here.
I mean, truly, I can't give an honest answer on that because it changes every year. It's something that is based off when the budget is due to system.
Mm-hmm.
And
May 21.
Yeah, so being that we're within a month here, month and a half, you still have time for sure, but I mean, it's definitely not getting to panic point yet. So
we're not there. All right.
It's nowhere near panic point.
We're going to try to avoid it. Okay, well, I'm hoping this will work out for us internally this week, and I know we'll be in touch, Ryan.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds good to me. And I know if you're trying to put together some reports to compare, if you're able to work with us on that, on just exactly what you need. Just another thing that I was mentioning, if the data exists, which for the most part it does in Hyperion, we're able to just throw different report formats left and right out there for you. And if you ever need any formalized reports, that's usually when we use those FR reports so that we could put them in a prettier format and send them out to you. Yeah.
Well, what I really need, we had the budget hearings meeting Friday. So, of course, the president and VP of Business were in there, and the thing that they are really needing is what I asked a little while ago, an operational budget. Where we stand today, like what does it look like we're dealing with right now?
Yeah.
An operational standpoint, and of course, VP of Business told me he hadn't been able to really get that in 2 years since he's been here. So I don't know. I've talked with some of the people on the financial reporting side, and they can't really. But it sounds like it's feasible in here, given into account, like Marie said, the roll forward things that we have to consider. But it looks like data in here. So that's what I need some help with right now.
Okay. And then one thing that I'm always just having to put out there, because it's just the way that it works with us here, is with something like that, or if you encounter any problems, yeah, if you could put in a ticket, just because we have plenty of tickets, and it's the only way that we could really prioritize work usually. If I have nothing going on and you give me a call, yeah, I'm going to do it for you. But otherwise, I got to follow that ticketing priority. Can't speak now. The priority level of the tickets.
That's quite all right. I understand it. I'm used to that ticket system without.
Okay, cool. That works then.
Okay. Well, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the time. So I'll just send out a couple reporting documentation.
Okay, thank you.
And also just the format template if you wanted to see it or get a head start on it at any point this week or next week, and send it back to me.
That will have it when we're ready. So.
Well, excellent. Okay. And 11 o'clock, so I kept you guys on time this week. So.
Perfect.
All right. Well, we'll hear from you again shortly.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.